Paradise Lost, Book 1. Of man's first disobedience, and the fruit of that forbidden tree, whose mortal taste brought death into the world, and all our woe with loss of Eden, till one greater man restore us, and regain the blissful seed. Sing, heavenly muse, that on the secret top of Oreb, or of Sinai didst inspire that shepherd, who first taught the chosen seed in the beginning how the heavens and earth rose out of chaos. Or if Zion hill delight thee more, and Siloam's brook have flowed fast by the oracle of God, I then invoke thy aid to my adventurous song, that with no middle flight intends to roar above the Ionian mount, while it pursues things unattempted yet in prose or rhyme. And chiefly thou, O Spirit, that dost prefer before all temples the upright heart and pure, instruct me, for thou knowest, thou from the first wast present, and with mighty wings outspread, dove-like sets brooding on the vast abyss, and makes it pregnant what in me is dark illuming, what is low rays and support, that to the height of this great argument I may assert eternal providence, and justify the ways of God to man. Say first, for heaven hides nothing from thy view, nor the deep tract of hell. Say first, what cause moved our grandparents in that happy state, favored of heaven so highly, to fall off from their Creator, and transgress his will from one restraint, laws of the world besides? Who first seduced them to that foul revolt? The infernal serpent he it was, whose guile, stirred up with envy and revenge, deceived the mother of mankind. What time his pride had cast him out from heaven, with all his host of rebel angels, by whose aid aspiring to set himself in glory above his peers, he trusted to have equalled the Most High, if he opposed, and with ambitious aim, against the throne and monarchy of God, raised impious war in heaven, and battled proud with vain attempt. Him the almighty power hurled headlong flaming from the ethereal sky, with hideous ruin and combustion down to bottomless perdition, there to dwell in adamantine chains and panel fire. Who does defy the omnipotent to arms? 9 times the space that measures day and night, to mortal man he with his horrid crew lay vanquished, rolling in the fiery gulf, confounded though immortal, but his doom reserved him to more wrath. For now the thought both of lost happiness and lasting pain torments him. Round his throws his baleful eyes, that witness huge affliction and dismay, mixed with obdurate pride and steadfast hate. At once as far as angels can he views the dismal situation waste and wild, a dungeon horrible on all sides round, as one great furnace flamed, yet from those flames no light, but rather darkness visible, served only to discover sights of woe, regions of sorrow, joyful shades, where peace and rest can never dwell. Hope never comes, but comes to all. But torture without end still urges in a fiery deluge, fed with ever-burning sulphur unconsumed. Such place eternal justice had prepared for those rebellious, here their prison ordained in utter darkness, and their portion set as far removed from God and light of heaven, as from the center thrice to the utmost pole. Oh, how unlike the place from whence they fell! There the companions of his fell, overwhelmed with floods and whirlwinds of tempestuous fire. He soon discerns, and well trained by his side, one next himself in power and next in crime, long after known in Palestine, and named Beelzebub, to whom the arch-enemy, and thence in heaven called Satan, with bold words, breaking the horrid silence, thus began. If thou beest him, but oh how fallen, how changed from him, who in the happy realms of light, clothed with transcendent brightness didst outshine, myriads though bright, if he whom mutual league, united thoughts and counsels, equal hope and hazard in the glorious enterprise, joined with me once, now misery has joined in equal ruin. Into what pit thou seest, from what heights fallen, so much the stronger proved he with his thunder. Until then, who knew the force of those dire arms? Yet not for those, nor what the potent victor in his rage can now inflict, do I repent or change. Though changed in outward lustre, the fixed mind, and high disdain from sense of injured merit, that with the mightiest raised me to contend, and to the fierce contention brought along innumerable force of spirits armed, that does dislike his realm, me preferring his utmost power with adverse power opposed, in dubious battle on the plains of heaven, and shook his throne. What though the field be lost? All is not lost. The unquenchable will and study of revenge, immortal hate, and courage never to submit or yield, and what is else not to be overcome. That glory never shall his wrath or might exalt from me, to bow and sue for grace with pliant knee, and deify his power, who from the terror of his arm so late doubted his empire, that were low indeed, that were ignominy and shame beneath this downfall. Thinks by fate the strength of gods, and his imperial substance cannot fall. Since through experience of this great event in arms not worse, in foresight much advanced, we may with more successful hope resolve to wage by force our guile eternal war, irreconcilable to our grand foe, who now triumphs, and in the excess of joy, so reigning holds the tyranny of heaven. So spake the apostate angel, though in pain, vaunting aloud, but wrecked with deep despair. And him thus answered soon his bold compeer: O Prince, O Chief of many-throned powers, that led the embattled seraphim to war under thy conduct, and in dreadful deeds fearless, endangered heaven's perpetual king, and put to prove his high supremacy, whether upheld by strength or chance or fate. Too well I see the rule the dire event, that with sad overthrow and foul defeat has lost us heaven, and all this mighty host in horrible destruction laid thus low, as far as gods and heavenly essences can perish. From the mind and spirit remains invincible, and vigor soon returns, though all our glory extinct and happy state here swallowed up in endless misery. But what if he, our conqueror, whom I now of force believe almighty, since no less than such could have overpowered such force as ours, have left us this our spirit and strength entire strongly to suffer and support our pains, that we may so suffice his vengeful ire, or do him mightier service, as he thrills by right of war, whate'er his business be, here in the heart of hell to work in fire, or do his errands in the gloomy deep. What can it then avail, though yet we feel strength undiminished, or eternal being to undergo eternal punishment? Whereto with speedy words the arch-fiend replied, Fallen cherub, to be weak is miserable doing or suffering, but of this be sure, to do aught good never will be our task, but ever to do ill our sole delight, as being the contrary to his high will whom we resist. If then his providence out of our evil seek to bring forth good, our labor must be to pervert that end, to pervert that end, and out of good still to find means of evil, which ofttimes may succeed, so as perhaps shall grieve him, if I fail not, and disturb his inmost counsels from their destined aim. But see, the angry victor has recalled his ministers of vengeance and pursuit back to the gates of heaven. The sulphurous hell shot after us in the storm. Orblon has laid the fiery surge that from the precipice of heaven received us falling, and the sounder, winged with red lightning and impetuous rage, perhaps has spent his shafts, and ceased now to bellow through the vast and boundless deep. Let us not slip the occasion, whether scorn or satiate fury yielded from our woe, from our foe. Seest thou yon dreary plain, forlorn and wild, the seat of desolation, void of light, save what the glimmering of these livid flames casts pale and dreadful. Thither let us tend from off the tossing of these fiery waves, their rest, if any rest can harbour there, and resembling our afflicted powers, consult how we may henceforth most offend our enemy, our own loss how repair, how overcome this dire calamity, what reinforcement we may gain from hope, if not what resolution from despair. Thus Satan, talking to his nearest mate, with head uplifted above the wave, and eyes that sparkling blazed, his other parts besides prone on the flood, extended long and large, lay floating many a rood, in bulk as huge as whom the fables name of monstrous size, Titanian or earthborn, that warred on Jove, Boreas or Typhon, whom the dam by ancient Tarsus held, or that sea beast Leviathan, which god of all his works created, huges that swing the ocean stream. Him happily slumbering on the Norway foam, the pilot of some small night-founded skiff, deeming some island, oft as seamen tell, with fixed anchor in his galley ringed, moors by his side under the lee, while night invests the sea, and wished morn delays. So stretched out, huge in length, the arch-fiend lay, chained on the burning lake, nor ever since had risen or heaved his head, but that The will and high permission of all ruling heaven left him at large to his own dark designs, that to his reiterated crimes he might heap on himself damnation, while he sought evil to others, and enraged might see how all his malice served but to bring forth infinite goodness, grace, and mercy shone on man by him seduced, but on himself treble confusion, wrath, and vengeance poured. Forthwith upright he rears from off the pool, his mighty stature on each hand. The flames driven backwards slope their pointing spires, and rolling billows leave in the midst a horrid veil. Then with expanded wings he steers his flight aloft, incumbent on the dusky air, that felt unusual weight, till on dry land he alights. If it were land that ever burnt with solid, as the lake with liquid fire, and such appeared in hue as when the force of subterranean wind transports a hill torn from Pelorus, or the shattered side of sundering Etna, whose combustible and fueled entrails, thence conceiving fire, sublimed with mineral fury, ate the wings, and leave a side bottom all involved with stench and smoke. Such resting found the soul of unblessed feet. Him followed his next mate, both glorying to have escaped the Stygian flood as gods, and by their own recovered strength, not by the sufferance of supernal power. Is this the region, the soil, the clime? Said then the lost archangel, this the seed that we must change for heaven, this mournful gloom for the celestial light. Be it so, since he who now is sovereign can dispose and bid what shall be right. Farthest from him is best, whom reason has equalled, force has made supreme above his equals. Farewell, happy fields where joy forever dwells. Hail, horrors, hail, infernal world, and thou, profoundest hell, receive thy new possessor, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. What matter here, or matter where, if I be still the same, and what I should be, all but less than he, whom thunder has made greater, here at least we shall be free. The Almighty has not built here for his envy, will not drive us hence. Here we may reign secure, and in my choice to reign is worth ambition, though in hell. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. But wherefore let we then our faithful friends, the associates and co-partners of our lost, lie thus astonished on the oblivious pool, and call them not to share with us their part in this unhappy mansion, or once more with rallied arms to try what may be yet regained in heaven, or what more lost in hell. So Satan spake, and him Beelzebub thus answered, Leader of those armies bright, which but the omnipotent none could have foiled, if once they hear that voice, their liveliest pledge of hope in fears and danger, heard so oft in worst extremes, and on the perilous edge of battle when it raged, in all assaults their surest signal, they will soon resume now courage and revive, though now they lie grovelling and prostrate on yon lake of fire, as we erewhile, astounded and amazed, no wonder, fallen such a pernicious height. His scars have ceased when the superior fiend was moving toward the shore. His ponderous shield, ethereal temper, massy, large and round behind him cast. The broad circumference hung on his shoulder like the moon, whose orb, through optic glass, the Tuscan artist views at evening from the top of Fieso, or in Valdarno to descry new lands, rivers or mountains in her spotty globe. His spear, to equal which the tallest pine, hewn on Norwegian hills, to be the mast of some great admiral, were but a wand he walked with to support uneasy steps over the burning moor. Not like those steps on heaven's azure, and the torrid climb smote on him sore besides, vaulted with fire. Natheless he so endured, till on the beach of the inflamed sea he stood and called his legions, angel forms, who lay entranced, thick as autumnal leaves that strow the brooks in Vallombrosa, where the Etrurian shades, high overarched in bower or scattered sedge afloat, when with fiery wings Orion armed has vexed the Red Sea coast, whose waves o'erthrew Busiris and his Memphian chivalry, while with perfidious hatred they pursued the sojourners of Goshen, who beheld from the safe shore their floating carcasses and broken chariot wheels, so thick bestrong, abject and lost lay these, covering the flood. Under amazement of their hideous change, he called so loud that all the hollow deep of hell resounded, "Princes, potentates, warriors, the flower of heaven, once yours, now lost, if such astonishment as these can seize. Eternal spirits, or have ye chosen this place after the toil of battle to repose your wearied virtue, for the ease you find to slumber here, as in the vales of heaven? Or in this abject posture have ye sworn to adorn the conqueror? And now behold cherub and seraph rolling in the flood with scattered arms and ensigns, till anon his swift pursuers from heaven gates discern the advantage, and descending tread us down. Thus drooping, or with linked thunderbolts transfix us to the bottom of this gulf. Awake! Rise, or be forever fallen. They heard, and were abashed, and up they sprung upon the wing, as when men wont to watch on duty, sleeping found by whom they dread, rouse and bestir themselves ere well awake. Nor did they not perceive the evil plight in which they were, or the fierce pangs not feel. Yet to their general's voice they soon obeyed, innumerable, as when the potent rod of Amram's son in Egypt's evil day waved round the coast, upcalled a pitchy cloud of locusts, warping on the eastern wind, that o'er the realm of impious Pharaoh hung like night and darkened all the land of Nile. So numberless were those bad angels seen hovering on wing under the cope of hell, twixt upper, nether, and surrounding fires, till as a signal given, the uplifted spear of the great Sultan waving to direct their course, in even balance down they light on the firm brimstone and fill all the plain. A multitude like which the populous north poured never from her frozen loins to pass rain or the Danor. When her barbarous sons came like a deluge on the south and spread beneath Gibraltar to the Libyan sands, forthwith from every squadron and each band the heads and leaders thither haste where stood their great commander, godlike shapes and forms excelling human, princely dignities and powers that erst in heaven sat on thrones, though of their names in heavenly records now be no memorial, blotted out and razed by their rebellion from the books of life. Nor had they yet among the sons of Eve got them new names to wandering all the earth through God's high sufferance for the trial of man. By falsities and lies the greatest part of mankind they corrupted to forsake God their Creator and the invisible glory of Him that made them to transform off to the image of a brute adorned with gay religions full of pomp and gold and devils to adore for deities. Then were they known to men by various names and various idols through the heathen world. Say muse, their names then known, who first, who last, roused from the slumber on that fiery couch, at their great emperor's call, as next in words came singly where he stood on the bare strand, while the promiscuous crowd stood yet aloof. The chief were those who from the pit of hell roaming to seek their prey on earth, durst fix their seats long after next to the seat of God. Their altars by his altar, gods adored, among the nations round, and durst abide, Yovan thundering out of Zion, thronged between the cherubim, yea, often placed within his sanctuary itself their shrines, abominations, and with cursed sings his holy rites and solemn feasts profaned, and with their darkness durst affront his light. First Moloch, horrid king, besmeared with blood of human sacrifice and parents' tears, though for the noise of drums and timbrels loud, their children's cries unheard, that passed through fire to his green idol, him the Ammonite worshipped in Rabbah and her watery plain, in Argob and in Basan, to the stream of Atmos Arnon. Nor content with such audacious neighborhood, the wisest heart of Solomon he led by fraud to build his temple right against the temple of God on the opprobrious hill, and made his grove the pleasant valley of Hinnom. Tophet sands and back Gehenna called the type of hell. Next Chemos, the obscene dread of Moab's sons, from Aroer to Nebo, and the wild of Southmost Abarim, in Hezebel and Horonan, Sion's realm beyond the flowery dale of Simba, clad with vines, and Elil to the asphaltic pool. Pair his other name, when he enticed Israel on Sittim, on their march from Nile to do him wanton rites, which caused them woe. Yet thence his lustful orgies he enlarged even to that hill of scandal, by the grove of Moloch homicide, lust hard by hate, till good Yorzen drove them thence to hell. With these came they who from the bordering flood of old Euphrates to the brook that parts Egypt from Syrian ground had general names of Baalim and Ashtaroth, those male, these feminine. For spirits, when they please, can either sex assume or both. So soft and uncompounded is their essence pure, so tied or manacled with joint or limb, nor founded on the brittle strands of bones, like cumbrous flesh, but in what shape they choose, dilated or condensed, bright or obscure, can execute their airy purposes, and works of love of amity fulfill. For those the race of Israel oft forsook, their living strands and unfrequented left his righteous altar, bowing lowly down to bestial gods, for which their heads as low bowed down in battle, sunk before the spear of despicable foes. With these in troop came Ashtaroth, whom the Phoenicians called Astarte, queen of heaven, with crescent horns, to whose bright image nightly by the moon Sidonian virgins paid their vows and songs. In Zion, also not unsung, where stood her temple on the offensive mountain, built by that unsorious king, whose heart, though large, beguiled by fair idolatresses, fell to idols foul. Samus came next behind, whose annual wound in Lebanon allured the Syrian damsels to lament his fate in amorous deities all that summer's day, while smooth Adonis from his native rock ran purple to the sea, supposed with blood of Tammuz, yearly wounded. The love tale infected Zion's daughters with like heat, whose wanton passions in the sacred porch Ezekiel saw, when by the vision led his eye surveyed the dark idolatries of alienated Judah. Next came one who mourned in earnest, when the captive ark manned his brute image, head and hands lopped off, in his own temple, on the groundsel edge, where he fell flat and shamed his worshippers, Dagon his name, sea monster, upward man and downward fish, yet had his temple high reared in Azotus, dreaded through the coast of Palestine, in Gath and Ascalon, and Acaron and Gaza's frontier bounds. Him followed Rimmon, whose delightful seat was fair Damascus, on the fertile banks of Abana and Pharpar, lucid streams. He also against the house of God was bold. A leper once he lost and gained a king. Ahaz his sottish conqueror, whom he drew God's altar to disparage and displace for one of Syrian mold, whereon to burn his odious offerings, and adore the gods whom he had vanquished. After this appeared a crew, who under names of old renown, Osiris, Isis, Horus, and their train with monstrous shapes and sorceries, abused fanatic Egypt and her priests to seek their wandering gods disguised in brutish forms rather than human. Nor did Israel escape the infection when their borrowed god composed the calf in Oreb, and the rebel king doubled that sin in Bethel and in Dan, likening his maker to the graced ox, Jovan, who in one night when he passed from Egypt marching equally with one stroke both firstborn and all her bleating gods. Belial came last, than whom a spirit more lewd fell not from heaven, or more gross to love vice for itself. To him no temple stood or altar smoked. Yet who more oft than he in temples and at altars? When the priest thus enthused, as did Eli's sons, who filled with lust and violence the house of God, in courts and palaces he also reigns, and in luxurious cities, where the noise of riot ascends above their loftiest towers, and injury and outrage, and when night darkens the streets, then wander forth the sons of Belial, flung with insolence and wine, witness the streets of Sodom, and that night in Gibeah, when the hospitable door exposed a matron to avoid worse rape. These were the prime in order and in might. The rest were long to tell, though far renowned. The Ionian gods of Javan's issue held, gods yet confessed later than heaven and earth, their boasted parents, Titans, heaven's firstborn, with his enormous brood, and birthright seized by young Saturn, he from mightier Jove, his own and rear son like measure found. So Jove usurping reigned, this first in Crete and Ida know. Thence on the snowy top of old Olympus ruled the middle air, their highest heaven, or on the Delphian cliff, or in Dodona, and through all the bounds of Doric land, or who with Saturn old fled over Adria to the Hesperian fields, and all the Celtic roamed the utmost isles. All these and more came flocking, but with looks downcast and damp. Yet such wearing appeared obscure some glimpse of joy to have found their chief not in despair, to have found themselves not lost in loss itself, which on his countenance cast like doubtful hue. But he, his wonted pride soon recollecting, with high words that bore semblance of words, not substance, gently raised their fainting courage and dispelled their fears. Then straight commands that at warlike sound of trumpets loud and clarions be upreared his mighty standard. That proud honor claimed Azazel as his right, a cherub tall, who forthwith from the glittering stuff unfurled the imperial ensign, which full high advanced, shone like a meteor streaming to the wind with gems and golden lustre rich in blaze, seraphic arms and trophies, all the while sonorous metal blowing martial sounds, at which the universal host upsent a shout that tore hell's concave, and beyond frightened the wren of chaos and old night. All in a moment through the gloom were seen 10,000 banners rise into the air, with orange colors waving. With them rose a forest huge of spears, and thronging helms appeared, and serried shields in thick array of depths immeasurable. Anon they move in perfect phalanx to the Dorian mood of lutes and soft recorders, such as raised to heights of noblest temper heroes old, arming to battle, and instead of rage deliberate valor breathed, firm and unmoved with dread of death to flight or foul retreat, nor wanting power to mitigate and surge with solemn touches troubled thoughts, and chase anguish and doubt and fear and sorrow and pain from mortal or immortal minds. Thus they breathing united forth with fixed thought moved on in silence to soft pipes that charmed their painful steps o'er the burnt soil. And now advanced, in view they stand, a horrid front of dreadful length and dazzling arms, in guise of warriors old, with ordered spear and shield, awaiting what command their mighty chief had to impose. He threw the army flight, he threw the armed fire's darts his experienced eyes, and soon traversed the whole battalion views. Their order due, their visages and statues and statures as of gods, their number lost his sons, and now his heart distends with pride, and heartening in his strength's glories, for never since created man. But such embodied force as enamored with these could merit more than that small infantry warred on by cranes, though all the giant brood of Legra with the heroic race were joined that fought at Thebes and Ilium, on each side mixed with auxiliar gods, and what sounds in fable or romance of Arthur's son, begirt with British and Armoric knights, and all whose things, baptized or infidel, jousted in Esperament or Mortaban, Damascus or Morocco or Trebizond, or whom Besetter sent from Africa's shore, when Charmley with all his peerage fell by Frontarabia. Thus far this beyond compare of mortal powers, yet observed their dread commander. He above the rest, in shape and gesture proudly eminent, stood like a tower. His form had yet not lost all her original brightness, nor appeared less than archangel ruined, and the excess of glory obscured, as when the sun new risen looks through the horizontal misty air shone of his beams, or from behind the moon in dim eclipse disastrous twilight sheds on half the nations, and with fear of change perplexes monarchs. Darkened so, yet shone above them all the archangel, but his face deep scars of thunder had entrenched, and care set on his faded cheek, but under brows of dauntless courage and considerate pride waiting revenge, cruel his eyes, but cast signs of remorse and passion to behold. The fellows of his crime, the followers rather, far other once beheld in bliss condemned, forever now to have their lot in pen. Millions of spirits for his fault immersed, of heaven and from eternal splendorous flung from his revolt, for his revolt, yet faithful how they stood, their glory withered, as when heaven's fire has scarced the forest oaks or mountain pines. With sign top their stately groves, though bare, stands on the blasted heaths. He now prepared to speak, where read their doubled ranks they bend from wing to wing, and half enclosed him round with all his peers. Attention held them mute. Thrice he essayed, and thrice in spite of scorn, tears such as angels weep burst forth at last. Words interwove with signs found out their way. Oh, myriads of immortal spirits, oh, power matchless, but with the Almighty, and that strife was not inglorious, though the event was dire, as this place testifies, and this dire change hateful to utter, or what power of might foreseeing or presaging, from the depth of knowledge past or present, could have feared how such united force of gods, how such as stood like these, could ever know repose? For who can yet believe, though after lost, that all these puissant legions, whose exile has emptied heaven, shall fail to reascend, self-raised, and reposes their native seat? For me, be witness all the host of heaven, if counsels different or dangers shunned by me have lost our hope, but he who reigns monarch in heaven till then, as one secure set on his throne, upheld by old repute, consent or custom, and his regal state put forth at full, but still his strength concealed, which tempted our attempt and wrought our fall. Henceforth his might we know, and know our own, so as not either to provoke or dread new war provoked, or better part remains to work in close design by fraud or guile what force effected not, that he no less at length from us may find, who overcomes by force had overcome but half his foe. Space may produce new words, whereof so rife there went a fame in heaven that he ere long intended to create, and therein planted generation, whom his choice regard should favour equal to the sons of heaven. Thither, if but to pry, shall be perhaps our first eruption, thither or elsewhere. For this infernal pit shall never hold celestial spirits in bondage, nor the abyss long under darkness cover. But these thoughts full counsel must mature. Peace is despaired, for who can sing submission? War then, war open or understood, must be revoked. He spake, and to confirm his words out flew millions of flaming swords, drawn from the thighs of mighty cherubim. The sudden blaze far round illumined hell. Highly they raged against the highest, and fierce with grasped arms clashed on their sounding shields the din of war, hurling defiance toward the vault of heaven. There stood a hill not far, whose grisly top belched fire and rolling smoke. The rest entire shone with a glossy scurf, undoubted sign that in his womb was hid metallic ore. The work of sulphur, thither winged with speed, a numberless brigade hastened, as when bands of pioneers with spade and pickaxe armed forerun the royal camp to trench a field or cast a rampart. Mammon led them on. Mammon, the least erected spirit that fell from heaven, or even in heaven his looks and thoughts were always downward bent, admiring more the riches of heaven's pavement trodden gold than aught divine or holy else enjoyed in vision beautified. By him first, men also, and by his suggestion taught, ransacked the centre, and with impious hands rifled the bowels of their mother earth for treasures better hid. Soon had his crew opened into the hill of a spacious wound and digged out ribs of gold. Let none admire that riches grow in hell. That soil may best deserve the precious bane. And here let those who boast immortal things and wondering tell of Babel and the works of Memphian kings learn how their greatest mountains of fame and strength in art are easily outdone by spirits reprobate, and in an hour, what in an age they will incessant toil and hands innumerable scarce perform. Nigh on the plain in many cells prepared, that underneath had veins of liquid fire sluiced From the lake a second multitude with wondrous art founded the messy ore, severing each kind, and scummed the Balian dross. A third as soon had formed within the ground, a various mould, and from the boiling cells by strange convenience filled each hollow nook, as in an organ. From one blast of wind to many a row of pipes the sound bored breezes. Anon out of the earth a fabric huge rose like an exhalation, with the sound of dulcet symphonies and voices sweet, built like a temple, where pilasters round were set, and Doric pillars overlaid with golden architrave. Nor did there want cornice or frieze, with bossy sculptures graven. The roof was fretted gold, not Babylon, not great El Cairo, such magnificence equalled in all their glories, to enshrine Belus or Serapis their gods, or seat their kings, when Egypt with Assyria strove in wealth and luxury. The ascending pile stood fixed her stately height, and straight the doors, opening their brazen folds, discover wide within her ample spaces o'er the smooth and level pavement, from the arched roof, patented by subtle magic, many a row of starry lamps and blazing cressets, fed with naphtha, and as Faltus yielded light as from a sky. The hasty multitude admiring entered, and the work some praise and some architect. His hand was known in heaven by many a tower structure high, when sceptred angels held their residence, and sat as princes whom the supreme king exalted to such power and gave to rule. Each in his hierarchy the orders bright, nor was his name unheard or adorned in ancient Greek, and in Ausonian land men called him Mausiba, and how he fell from heaven they fabled, thrown by angry Jove sheer o'er the crystal battlements. From morn to noon he fell, from noon to dewy eve, at summer's day, and with the setting sun dropped from the zenith like a falling star. On Lemnos, the Aegean isle, thus they relate, erring, for he with his rebellious root fell long before, nor aught availed him now to have built in heaven high towers, nor did he escape by all his engines, but was headlong sent with his industry's crew to build in hell. Meanwhile the winged heralds by command of sovereign power, with awful ceremony and trumpet sound throughout the host, proclaim a solemn council forthwith to be held at Pandemonium, the high capital of Satan and his peers. Their summons called from every band and squared regiment, by place or choice the worthiest. They anon with hundreds and with thousands trooping came attended. All excess was thronged. The gates and porches wide, but chief the spacious hall, though like a covered field where champions both wont riding armed. And at the Soldan's chair defied the best of paining chivalry to mortal combat or career with lance. Six swarmed, both on the ground and in the air, brushed with the hiss of rustling wings. As bees in springtime, when the sun with Taurus rides, pour forth their populous ewes above the hive in clusters, they among fresh dews and flowers fly to and fro, all on the smoothed plank. The suburb of their straw-built citadel, new wrapped with balm, expatiate, and confer their state affairs. So thick the airy crowd swarmed and were straightened till the signal given. Behold a wonder! They but now who seemed in bigness to surpass earth's giant sons, now less than smallest dwarfs, in narrow rooms raw numberless, like that pitch-mean race beyond the Indian mount, or fiery elves whose midnight revels by a forest side or fountain some belated peasant sees, or dreams he sees, while overhead the moon sits arbitrous and nearer to earth, wheels her pale course, they on their mirth and dance intent, with jocund music charm his ear, at once with joy and fear his heart rebounds. Thus incorporeal spirits to smallest forms reduced their shapes immense, and were at large, though without number still, amidst the hall of that infernal court, but far within and in their own dimensions like themselves, to great seraphic lords and cherubim enclosed with recesses and secret conclaves set 1,000 demigods on golden seats, frequent and full. After short silence, then and summons read, the great consult begin. Book 1.